Tonight's topic is not an unusual topic and not an uncommon topic that we haven't addressed several times over the last few years. However, it's always an important topic and one that's at the forefront of our mind. We're very lucky tonight to be joined by Craig Hilton from the Australian Industry Group and Dr. Roger Lumley from AW Bell. Tonight's presentation is going to be a two-part presentation. We're going to hear first of all from Roger and about the activity that AW Bell have engaged in since 2019, where they became successful in securing state government grant to partner with a training organisation and deliver the Australian first targeted course in defence manufacturing and investment casting. Roger's going to share a lot of detail about that, so I won't go further into that. And after Roger's presentation, Craig from AI Group is in charge of the higher apprenticeship development and the AI Group's workforce. And he's going to talk to us about how AI Group work with the existing training system. And he's going to ask us for our opinion on where we're at with our training, where we see deficiencies, where we'd like to see changes, and perhaps give us some assistance in how we manage through the training bubble. So without further ado, I'll quickly introduce Roger. Most of you will probably know Roger. He's been so great. We're very grateful to have Roger join us on a number of occasions and present to us on many different topics. Roger is the Senior Technical Specialist at AW Bell and has over 25 years in material science and engineering, manufacturing, research and project management. He has a science degree in metallurgy, PhD in material science and engineering, has a higher doctorate in engineering, all of which he gained from the University of Queensland. Rogers has various areas of expertise, including advanced manufacturing, methods engineering, ferrous and non-ferrous production, boundary technology, heat treatment, self-healing materials, non-destructive testing, welding, powder metallurgy and quality systems. So that all said, tonight I'm going to turn it over to you, Roger, and you can share with us your experiences and the experience of AW Bell and how you came about developing a new training program.
Right, well, it's certainly a pleasure to be here tonight. Tonight I'm going to be talking to you about a course in precision metal castings, which has got the code assigned to it from the Victorian Department of Education and Training of 22538 Vic. Now, coming about to, I guess the last minute reason why I'm giving this talk is that I was actually supposed to be in Hobart from tonight onwards for the next week, but as you know, things didn't quite pan out like that for those of us in Victoria, and we still can't go anywhere. So as was said before, I'm the Senior Technical Specialist at AW Bell, and I have a number of different roles within the company, most of all leading the forward-moving initiatives that we have, where we're looking a long way in advance. And part of that is really looking at the where we want to go down the track. As was said before, we are, of course, in a COVID-safe presentation here, so of course this is the sign that's surrounding all of Melbourne at the moment, at least until tomorrow night. So this is one of those things that we're dealing with, and hopefully they're going to actually let us all out tomorrow night, and we might be able to go and do something. So certainly we are being as responsible as we can, and I'd say building this program very much during last year was a very, very difficult prospect because of all the lockdowns and restrictions that we had. So we did eventually get across the line earlier this year, which was absolutely fantastic. So just give you a little bit of an overview of AW Bell first, and it gives you a bit of indication as to why we started down this path of developing a training package mostly for our staff. AWBL is a global supplier of complex metal parts with high mechanical properties to aerospace, defence, space and biomedical industries. And our company vision is to be the most innovative and customer-focused supplier of quality casting solutions globally. AWBL operates out of a purpose-built facility in Dandenong South in Victoria. And we have around about 95 staff, quite a diversified customer base, mostly aerospace, defence, biomedical, and automotive, not so much automotive anymore, mining, construction, rail, fluid transport and other equipment. And at the moment, the majority of what we're working on is defence and aerospace products. And currently into the Joint Strike Fighter program, very pleased to say we've now shipped over 55,000 parts in total into the Joint Strike Fighter program, which is a absolutely fantastic milestone. We're going up every month, of course, and so we should be hitting around about 60 to 70,000 parts by the end of this calendar year, which is an awesome outcome. So the business units for AWBL, this is one of the things that I guess is not as well known about the company. We often talk about our foundry activities, but AWBL actually has 3 business units. We have the foundry, or the main business foundry unit, and then we have AWBL Precision, and that's a precision machining facility, and it's a separate business unit to our foundry unit. And then we have AWBL Equipment. Now, I've told you a bit about the foundry. The precision machining is part of the company. We have 10 machining centers, which are all operating pretty much 24 hours a day. And then we have a range of 4 and 5 axis machines. We have 3 new Akumas in that system, in that department, and it's going absolutely great guns, and it helps us keep up with a lot of the aerospace products that we're doing. We also have assembly and like tier 1 assembly and that sort of thing is also done through our precision machining division. Now, we also have AWBL machinery, which is equipment design and build. And AWBL machinery builds equipment for customers all over the world. During last year, they actually built a robotic grinding system for a foundry over in Adelaide, which was fantastic to see. It was half a dozen robots or so on the floor for quite some time, and seeing it all evolve was absolutely awesome. But the majority of what they make is more so cut-off grinding and water blast systems, mostly for the investment casting industry. And their main customer base is in North America, where they're known as one of the top equipment suppliers in the North American foundry industry. So some of our customers, and this sort of gives you some idea as to why we had to go down the path of upskilling and looking at what we can do to help our staff out. As our customers demand higher and higher levels out of the products, we need to be able to account for that. And certainly, Northrop Grumman is by and large our largest customer, and across a range of products mostly in the EDAS area, but also in some other aerospace fields. Moran Precision, which manufacture the trailer for the Joint Strike Fighter, they're not far from us, so a local Victorian company. BAE Systems, who we work with all over the world. Rheinmetall Defence, who we became an approved supplier for back in 2016, and now that they've moved on to get the Boxer and in Land 400, it's been a really nice outcome, and it was very good to be part of their supply chain in advance. Australian Submarine Corporation, we do supply of engine components to the diesel engines that go into the Collins-class submarines. Thales, Glencore, Kenworth, Leica, Bombardier, and Levitt. And Levitt, of course, is we're part of Pratt & Whitney's supply chain through Levitt, where we supply engine components into the F135 engine. So now I mentioned about Northrop Grumman being one of our, or probably easily our largest customer. The electro-optical distributed aperture system, which is the camera system that goes in the Joint Strike Fighter, we're now the sole source supplier of machine castings in that program, and have been since 2020. which is absolutely fantastic. Getting a North American aerospace company to source 100% of the castings, 100% of the machine parts out of Australia is extremely unusual, and a real testament to the way that that program's gone. And you can see how we've gone since 2015 onwards in terms of the castings, the machine castings we got out of it. But of course, whenever you ramp up numbers like this, you need to be able to keep your workers' skill level ramping up as well as you go. And that can be a challenge, especially if you have some turnover. Some of the other ones, I mentioned the engine change trailer. There's some quite significant castings on that, especially associated with the hubs in the corners here. The parts we make for Levitt, which I mentioned, which go into the F135 engine, and then there's the flare magazines, or the electronic warfare magazines that are in the that are made by BAE, which we are the only approved casting supplier of those parts globally. We're not currently in production on them, but we are the only approved casting supplier of the parts. Other key customers include submarines, automotive. We did a lot of work with Holden Special Vehicles up until recently, especially on the Corvette that you see here. Then Leica Biosystems in Germany have been a large customer for many years, and Bombardier. And we've been actually supplying quite a lot of product that has been going into Queensland Rail recently as well, which has been a really nice piece of work. So the course in precision metal castings that was developed, it was identified that there existed a need to upskill the current staff and also to provide a fundamentally improved recruitment career pathway for workers in precision investment castings. Long term, it is AWBL's wish to move into higher valuated casting markets requiring an improved or higher skill set. We, through the Victorian Skills Commissioner's Office, we applied for, we started looking into the Workplace Training and Innovation Fund projects that were being put out. I heard a little bit more about it because I sit on the Victorian Skills Commissioner's Industry Advisory Group, so I knew a little bit more about what was going on with it. But what we did is we applied for one of these as a partnership between AWBL, Chisholm TAFE, and Meridian Sculpture. And Meridian are an art foundry who also do investment castings, and they're over in Fitzroy in the city in Melbourne. The total project value for its whole run through was approximately around about 1.1 million, including cash and in-kind contributions from all of the partners. We first had to submit a seed funding proposal, which was pretty small. It was around 50,000, which was submitted in March 2017. And that was basically to give an outline to the Department of Ed and Training to say, well, this is what we think we're going to be able to do. What do you reckon? And then they could assess that and say, yes, go through to a full proposal, or no, pull the plug then. So they put us through to a full project proposal, and that was approved in October 2018. It was actually, there's a lot more to that story actually in the period between March 2007 and October 2018, because we actually submitted it and it initially got knocked back. And we went and did an interview with the Department of Education and Training and said, well, look, we'd like to resubmit. What do you think we should do better or do again? And they looked over it and they said, well, actually, we think there's nothing wrong with it. We think that this one should actually move forward. So they went from the position of knocking it back and to the position of saying yes to it, because basically we went and queried it and said, well, what can we do better? And they said, well, we think it's actually correct now that we've looked at it in more detail. So, or if you ever go for one of these projects, always make sure you question it and you learn from whatever feedback you can get out of the people who are funding it. So after October 2018, there was an embargo on talking about the project until there was a ministerial announcement in 2019. And it was actually 9 months between it was approved to when the minister actually made an announcement. And by that stage, we're well underway in development, and we had the steering committee together, and we're already going through some of the details of it. And now Gary was on the steering committee. Andrew Meek, who's also in this presentation tonight, was the chair of the steering committee. And I think we might have a couple of other people too from the audience who are listening to us right now. So we were well in development by the middle of 2019 and started developing the content and looking at what actually needed to be done. Now, George Adder from Box Hill TAFE really has to be acknowledged for his fantastic input here. Now, George wasn't going to be part of the project, but he agreed to help us get it through all the validation process and get it through to the point where we could get it approved through the Department of Education and Training. And we did the content development during 2019 and the building of the units during 2020. In 2019, we sent 2 staff to go and do the Investment Casting Institute's course, which is a week-long course and run out of North America. We sent 2 staff over to do that so that we could borrow some of their stuff. And of course, they were more than happy for us to work with them on some of what we're doing. The other part of the whole process is that no matter how much I tried, I couldn't get out of doing a Cert 4 in training and assessment. So I did about 2/3 over the period of 12 months. I did about 2/3 of it by recognition of prior learning, and around about the last third of it I did by coursework. And of course, the big thing about anything associated with the vet sector is if you don't have Cert 4 in training and assessment, you can't teach. So that's an absolute showstopper if you don't have it. If you are interested in looking at training programs, you must do it. But once you've done it, that's great. There's nothing to it. It's all green lights from there onwards. So the intended learning outcomes out of the course were, as you can see here, quality systems and standards for aerospace and defence, Industry 4.0 and digital systems for defence manufacturing, casting design and development for precision components, best practices in wax shell and casting, some introduction to metallurgy and casting practices, doing moulding and pattern making. So we sort of, although it's mostly based around investment casting, everyone doing it does get exposure to sand casting as well. Running furnaces and doing heat treatment, investing casting process control and tools. The students get exposure to 3D printing, and one of the modules run by the TAFE is in 3D printing. There is a strong component of using virtual reality for foundry learning, and also there's one of the units which is run by Chisholm. There's a section there which talks quite a bit about how you use and specify non-destructive testing, which of course is very, very important for a lot of the stuff that we do, because as you move further and further up into the quality control areas, you get more and more NDT, and you need much higher levels of understanding of what NDT does and what it can do for you. The picture that you see there, I should explain, that's a 3D printed SLA impeller. And of course, that is then turned into investment casting. So it incorporates a whole lot of the things when it's finally cast and put onto made into a part and then put into a pump. It incorporates a lot of what you actually see on the left-hand side there, except for perhaps virtual reality for foundry learning, which is something that is still a bit of a work in progress, and we're all still learning exactly how you can use virtual reality for foundry. So the class for the pilot phase, you can see here. There's 13 students in the class, and in the picture there's 2 of the facilitators from Chisholm, which you can see on the left and over here on the right hand side. In the class we have 2 people from Meridian, with Gareth from who's the CEO, and Evan, who's one of his workers, and they've agreed to come and do the course with us, which is absolutely fantastic. And the group that we have is very multidisciplinary, and we chose the group like this on purpose. So we have a range of supervisors and floor staff, and we have chosen them out of all areas of the business. So we have this ability to generate multidisciplinary teams who are bringing all different skills and experience. And the whole idea is that there's a very strong emphasis on peer learning. So you need to have a good mixture of people to have peer learning within the group, and that's also very, very important. I believe it's the best way to do it, and the students absolutely, or the staff absolutely love it, being taught how to do stuff in things that they don't know by people that they do actually work with. So the course at a glance, and it runs for approximately 2 years, so it's not a lightweight. It's got a lot in it, definitely. There's a total of around about 400 hours in total, of which is around 300 face-to-face and around about 100 which is supposed to be self-paced. Where it says self-paced learning, that's also partly workplace learning as well, because of course self-paced learning can be putting someone into a new area and they learn on the go, and they give the supervisor a bit of a framework about what you want them to pick up and what skills you want them to learn, so they can actually learn while they're working. And then when you go to assess them, you can do an observation and just observe and answer the question, well, can they do all the things that I wanted them to be able to do? So it's a very strong emphasis on workplace learning. So part of all of this was I built 5 of the units for this. Now I wasn't going to originally, but I ended up doing it. So the 5 units that I built were work safely in a foundry environment, perform tool assembly and disassembly. And when I say tool assembly and disassembly, I'm talking about an investment casting tool. The tool is where you're injecting the wax. And there's a lot of, they can be quite intricate in the way that you actually pull them apart and remove all the sliding pieces to get the wax out of it. Then produce shells and perform dewaxing processes. Also wrote perform casting, production and melting using metal, and then perform heat treatment processes. I may also have to write the unit on use mixed or blended reality technologies. It just depends on how proficient I get in it between now and when we're actually offering it. Chisholm are offering 3 units here, write simple documents, which is basically just making sure that everyone can do those simple things like writing an SOP, understanding an SOP, or all that sort of thing. That is surprisingly important. I mean, SOPs have to be written, I believe SOPs have to be written by the people that are using them. That's the best way to make them meaningful. So writing simple documents with a focus on tasks and workplace tasks is very important. Apply metallurgy principles is one that is out of the vet, already in the vet sector, and that has a lot about how you apply non-destructive testing in metallurgy, and so that's very useful, especially for our guys in aftercast, or for other people who are learning these sorts of things. Now, it's surprising how much NDT you actually find yourself doing on other products like waxes, for example. You're continually inspecting waxes for cracks or splits or misruns or all the stuff that we see normally. But if you can pick it up at wax stage, you can really get an improved product out the other end. So getting people with a knowledge of NDT all through the whole system is very, very advantageous. So the first unit, and this unit we've now run 3 days of this unit. So we're sort of 3/4 of the way through. And the contents of this unit are basically hazards and risks, including workplace hazard assessments, which is done through a series of walkthroughs. The students get first of all, a bit of hands-on experience in sand molding, preparing and casting aluminium. So they do some sand castings in aluminium. They get experience in the ferrous side of the foundry, and that's a little bit more intense and generally involves operating some of the big ferrous furnaces and pulling shells out of the hot ovens, which is not for the faint-hearted. The first time someone has to pull something out of an oven at 1,000 degrees, they tend to, their heart runs pretty fast. So, getting people who are not familiar with these things to go and have a go at it and understand what is done is very, very useful. And being able to cross-skill our people has really been a focus of what we've been doing so far, and getting a feel for who's going to be able to cross-train or work in other areas as well. A little bit here on fettling as well. Of course, the way that the vet sector wanted this done was focusing more about what you do in the hot areas of foundry, but in all reality, the fettling or the aftercast shop is very, very important for working safely. Of course, you need to be able to remove the gates and risers and things. So, this course is so far we've got through most of the melting side of it. We've got we're going to have another day in the foundry before we do a little bit of work in the aftercast. But most of all, there's a very strong focus on multidisciplinary teams and peer learning. And I'll just give you some examples of this on the next slide. And this is photos that I took on Friday just gone. And so I had the 2 groups. I split the class into 2 groups, and I had one working on the aluminium side doing sand casting and pouring aluminium, and the other half doing work in the steel foundry. So you can see the kind of groups we've got here. We've got the machine shop supervisor is working with two of the staff out of the wax room, and they're making sand molds, completely out of the normal zone of what any of them would be doing, but giving them experiences to, these are the steps you actually have to go through to make a sand mold. Then one of the guys from Meridian, who usually makes art sculptures, is there with the foundry and sandline supervisor, who was actually instructing the guys in the area. and running them through. Then in the top right, you can see the Gareth from Meridian working with one of our guys from the sand line and one of our guys from the foundry, and the guys from the gentleman from the foundry is teaching the guys about what's important in running a large induction furnace, or a 300 kilogram induction furnace. Then at the bottom left, you can see they're having a go at pouring a pretty small aluminium casting, but getting the feel for how you actually have to handle molten metal is important. And it's one of these things, people get nervous about it, and you've got to break down that nervousness and get them used to doing some of these things so they can do it well. Then in the middle, you've got Mark and City from Aftercaster gearing up, getting ready to pull shells out of the oven. That was very well done. All the parts have come out spotless, so all done very, very nicely and done very, very safely. And then City then minding one of the big induction furnaces while we're melting. So the next unit that we're going to be running is on performing tool assembly and disassembly, and this is all about the wax room injection and treeing, learning about the waxes, the machine parameters for injection, and the factors that influence quality at the wax phase. And just to give you an example, when we talk about observable tasks that are in the whole process, you're looking at things like conducting assembly of the tool, conduct injection of the runner system, assembly of two trees, and do all the quality checks, for example. And again, because we've got people out of the wax room, they will actually be training the other staff who are not familiar with the wax room how to do all these activities. And these are the kinds of things that we'll be looking at. So you've got the wax presses down here. This one's a big automatic press that you see at the end of the walkway there. But then you've got a couple of parts here which are assembled on a tree. These are going to be cast in aluminium with a down sprue and the filter section, and then the parts which are joined onto the tree in the middle. But also because of the fact that they're going to be getting some experience in doing 3D printing, we'd hope that they'll be able to actually mount some of the things that they can 3D print in PLA or some other plastic and put them on a tree. And this is probably out of the scope of what the students are going to be doing, but this is the kind of thing that you can get where, for example, this is a 6-cylinder manifold that's been 3D printed and then turned into an aluminium part. So, there's a whole lot of these sorts of things you can do. So there's going to be encouragement for the students when they learn to do 3D printing, that they actually learn how to take that 3D printed part in plastic and turn it into a metal part as well. So the next unit is produce shells and perform dewaxing processes, and this is all about when you're putting the slurry on the shell or slurry on the wax and building the shell. And there's a lot to do here on testing of the quality of the slurries and the backup coats that are put on to build the shells. So much because you're doing layers of ceramic, the incidence of what's called shell spall, which is basically a lamination defect, is actually one of the major issues that you run into. And it all comes back to what's the quality of all of the coats and transition coats and the stucco that you're putting on and everything like that. So there's a very strong quality aspect to this particular unit. And the whole idea of this really is the outcome here is that in production, we'll get a lot less parts which have shell spall or delamination type defects in them. Now, you don't always have those kinds of things, but when you do have an outbreak, they can be quite severe and give you all kinds of dramas. So anything you can do to teach people, give people the skills and the tools that they need to be able to eliminate the problem is definitely advantageous. Then performing casting, production and melting using metals. So this is where they actually go and spend a lot more time in the foundry and doing some of the things that you see here. So it'll be preparing and melting metal for ferrous, preparing and melting metal for aluminium, preparing melt charge calculations to specifications. Now that's the only piece of maths in the whole course. But it is something that the guys in the foundry do absolutely every day of the week. They're always doing melt charge calculations, and if they get it wrong, then you have time delays in what you're doing. So making sure that everybody understands and knows how to do melt charge calculations is actually very, very critical. But then also conducting the visual testing of manufactured castings and identify casting related defects. Now what you see here, of course, is the standard casting out of the out of a 300 kilogram furnace, pulling the shells in the second picture, pouring a sand casting in the third image, and then the fourth one, that's a rollover furnace. So that's literally, we've just cast that there, and the operator's just cast it, so he's made a good casting. Basically the way these work is you put the shell on top of the furnace and the whole lot flips over and pours the metal straight out of the furnace into it. So you'll see the inductor therm is upside down because the furnace has been flipped when the casting's been poured. So using a rollover furnace actually gets people the ability to actually cast something without having to learn how to use the ladle, for example, which is on a crane and takes a little bit of learning. This is extremely easy to use and takes about 5 minutes for someone to learn how to use. So it gives the ability to everybody to have a go at actually casting something that is a high temperature material. Then the final unit for performing heat treatment processes, and this is in ferrous and non-ferrous heat treatment. So it essentially is associated with understanding and preparing tempering curves for ferrous, preparing age hardening curves for aluminium, setting up a heat treatment furnace run for aluminium, specifically to meet the requirements that you would find for aerospace. And most of this training has also been done in accordance with the SAE standard ARP 1962. And this is one of the things that it is called out by most aerospace suppliers, that they want you to be doing your training program in accordance with that standard. There's an expectation that one day it will become a standard that a full standard that they are going to call out, and it is quite onerous in the hours and the timing that they need to put into it. But if you've got a good training plan in place in advance before you do it, then that's a huge advantage. So the way that was built was keeping in mind the requirements of the SAE standard. Okay, so in summary, a course in precision investment casting has been established with assistance from the Department of Education and Training through the Workplace Training and Innovation Fund and supported by the Victorian Skills Commissioner's Office. And in addition to the units taught by Chisholm TAFE, 5 new foundry units have been developed related to precision investment casting. The expectation is that the upskilling and cross-training with staff combined with peer learning will work to fill skills gaps and create a more robust and integrated workforce. It is also to provide staff with a career path within the metal casting industry. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much, and thanks for listening to my talk. We'll take questions later on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Roger. I really appreciate that.
No
Our
worries.
original plan was to perhaps, given that probably people have some questions fresh in their mind, they may want to address these now with you. Are you
Yeah, sure.
good to do that? Okay, great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure.
Has anyone got any questions that you may or may not be able to pop into the chat section so that people aren't talking over themselves? I have one, but I am prepared to let someone else go first. Right, looks like it's me. So, Roger, with regard to the course content, who owns that content, and is it transferable amongst the wider casting industry community?
Yeah, absolutely. Right from the outset, we assigned the copyright in the whole course to the Victorian Skills Commissioner. So because of that, it is owned by Department of Education and Training, which means it's accessible to everybody.
So other businesses can then pick up and cherry pick,
absolutely.
for better word? Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
Anyone within at the moment, anyone with Victoria can pick up one of the units and build their own unit around what's there, and implement it themselves.
Okay. All right. Gary?
I don't have any questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I sent a text message through the chat. So if anybody has a question, just type it in. You might have to click the box before you can start typing. It should be at the bottom of the chat window.
Okay. All right. Okay. So from Sam, how did I find the Cert 4 in training and assessment? Okay, that's a really important question, and probably something that deserves a talk on its own right. Cert 4 in training and assessment is a pain, no question about it. It took there's I think it was 16 units in the Cert 4, and I think I did 11 of them by recognition of prior learning, and the final 5 I realized I couldn't do by recognition of prior learning, so I sat through the courses on a Saturday mornings for about 2 months, and that was, I mean, at the end of it all, it was certainly worth it. And I'd really say that if you want to train your staff, structure in how you might do a Cert 4. Once it's over and done with, you're there. You know, there's nothing holding you back from running accredited courses for vet, and that's that was really good. Okay, next question was what level of interest did you get from employees to participate in the training? The level of interest was extremely good. It was very, very high. We had an initial target of 15 people, and that had to be negotiated, of course, between the staff, their supervisors, and you know, and really making sure that they understood it was going to be a 2-year commitment for them. But the expectation is that eventually all staff will do the training. What we're running at the moment is the pilot phase. And so there's learnings to be had out of the pilot phase. There's things that are going to go well, things that are not going to go so well. The idea is that then we build something that is really robust and take on the recommendations from the students who do it. And so far, everything's been going very, very well. But yeah, the employees that are doing it are absolutely loving it so far, at least from what they're telling me anyway. So, which is great. So training done in work hours or after hours? We are doing the training in work hours. We do it every second Friday with the team.
Could you stop sharing your screen now, Roger?
Yep, sure thing.
Okay, so if that's all the questions, Amber, could you introduce the next speaker?
Yes, thanks, Gary. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, our next speaker, Craig Hilton, comes to us from the AI group, and he is involved in higher apprenticeships. Craig's been part of the AI group since 2006. He's been involved in employment and training as a consultant, and during that time he has recruited and mentored, it says, over 250 apprentices and trainees. Craig's participated in competency-based progression implementation. He's assisted with the implementation of the industry specialist mentoring for Australian apprentices in manufacturing and engineering, and his current role is why he's here tonight. And without further ado, Craig, I'm going to hand right over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Amber, and thanks also, Roger. It was a really good presentation. Thank you, and I'll probably like to follow up and speak a bit more about how that could align with apprenticeships as well.
Sure thing. Yep.
In future, that would be fantastic. So I'm just filling in some talking here whilst I share my screen. I'm hoping we don't have as many challenges as we did the other night, Gary, but can people see my screen there now?
Yes.
Yep. Fantastic. Okay. Thanks again, Amber, for the introduction. Yeah, you can probably see by my hair that mentoring and employing over 250 apprentices. Look, I do love it, and I actually miss the direct interaction I used to have with apprentices. And we actually had some apprentices out at AW Bell a number of years ago and have been there. And I think that there may be another 1 or 2 companies that you know of that we have apprentices hosted to. I'll explain a little bit about, let me just see if I can, get my screen to actually. Yeah, so look, I'll just go through a couple of things here about what we do. Myself, of late, have changed again a little bit of a role within our apprentice and trainee centre, but I'll explain a little bit about the challenges that we're finding, particularly in recruiting for the metals trades, engineering and manufacturing. When we relate manufacturing to engineering, it's really around those trades, fitters, fabrication, and you could probably throw in cabinet making and furnishings into manufacturing as well. But tonight we'll focus on the metals. I'll sort of skip through these first bits. Most of you, or maybe some of you, are aware of AI Group and what it does as an organisation. It assists businesses with a whole range of services. We have sort of separate departments nowadays, like AI Group Legal, which is a standalone entity, as well as our Apprentice and Trainee Centre, which is also a standalone entity. So we're a not-for-profit organisation ourselves as the Apprentice and Trainee Centre, but we're very fortunate to be a part of the AI Group. One of the differences, and for those of you who also know a bit about group training, we employ the apprentices and host apprentices out to businesses. And one of the fortunate things I say, like for us, is that we can actually advise companies and help companies with the recruitment, managing, mentoring of apprentices, but we also gather feedback from those businesses about what's working, what's not working, and feed that back through AI Group. And AI Group has a really strong connection through to government and to education departments and the like. So we're very fortunate to be sort of like a conduit that we can assist in improving apprenticeship system, as well as directly get out and help businesses with their apprentices and trainees. So just a little bit more about sort of group training for those that are unaware. We work with what we say host employers. They're the businesses that you guys are out there running businesses yourselves. So you really have a choice between whether you want to employ an apprentice directly yourself, or you can employ one via group training organisation. So we both work. Either way, we'd work with a registered training organisation like a TAFE, or in some cases private training providers as well. I should note that we're a bit different to what they call an ASN provider, or a ASN provider, which is Australian Support Network Providers. They have the legal opportunity or the license to sign apprentices and trainees into their contract. We don't have that, so we have to connect with one of those, just like an individual employer would have to do as well. So we don't do the administering of the contracts and that sort of thing. So that sort of list there of just sort of what we can do. We stay with the apprentices and trainees throughout the journey. So we really sort of like become part of your organisation on a bit of a skills journey about training young people when they first come into the workplace, and work with them and the training provider, and ensure that we come out 7 times a year on average to see apprentices in the workplace. So it's really about monitoring their progress, and quite often what we're trying to achieve is to work with the training provider on maybe accelerating part of the training where we can, to enable an apprentice to look at higher qualifications. So I would say probably around about 75% of our apprentices will go on and do a Certificate 4 as part of their apprenticeship. So that's sort of a bit of a target of ours, is to increase the skill level of apprentices and trainees. And I think it particularly works well in the engineering trades, because the candidates we're looking for quite often are already on a bit of a journey into engineering, but maybe choosing between going to university to study the theoretical side of engineering, or whether they want to do a practical hands-on sort of learning. And so we'll really try and maximise the qualification levels they can gain throughout the apprenticeship. Now, this slide's a bit of at risk of confusing. I'm trying to highlight how confusing apprenticeships can be. I won't try and sort of explain the whole thing, because we won't have time tonight to go through and for me to try and explain everything for you. But I think one of the big problems that we've got in the apprenticeship system at the moment, and across our training sector across the country, is the layers of support and the complexity of the system itself. And I think that's part of the problem of what I know a lot of employers have explained to us they're just not really sure which way to go to even employ an apprentice. And then if they've got one, how do they get the contract signed? How do they get them enrolled at TAFE? Can they get access to mentoring and support services and things like that? Now, they are all available. They're available so much that's what I'm saying is the problem is maybe it's a bit too confusing of which way do you turn. I don't want to just make it sound like a sell for group training, but group training does actually take care of all of those, the layers of services out there, and do that on behalf of the employer. But if you do, employ apprentices yourself, there are, like your ASIN provider should be able to provide you with information of, any sort of which way you need assistance with. The other part, which I'm going to explain a little bit more about towards the end of this, is building a community of people for your skills training in your workplace. And there's a few in this here that I sort of refer to as, I think, are really good members of that community that you should form. So forming a really good connection with your TAFE, and I think what Roger's just highlighted there, connecting with Chisholm TAFE and developing a program for internally for what you want to achieve in your workplace. That's forming that community. And then if you're going to go to the apprenticeship level, then you're going to need someone like an ASIN provider or the support network providers. You're going to need them on board. And again, I'll come back to a little bit more about the other one there, local learning and employment networks. In each region in Victoria, you have sectors with, so the local learning and employment networks, they're responsible for connecting schools to industry. And so they'll work with a range of other organisations that can help find candidates to come into work experience programs and the like. So again, if you start exploring and developing a network, you'll find there's just layers and layers. But we're here to help if you find that it is getting a bit too confusing. From the applicant side of things, I do a lot of work in promoting apprenticeships in general, but a lot of the time it's focusing around engineering and manufacturing apprenticeships, and I can say it keeps me very busy because there's a high demand from schools and like I said, those local learning and employment networks. A lot of those are asking for us to come and help promote apprenticeships to students, and they're realizing that so many students have been farmed straight into university, and a lot of the time it's not working out too well. So they're looking at really trying to now promote and reinvigorate that sort of connection to trades, which is a great thing. But this slide here, I just wanted to highlight, this is a survey that was done just a couple of years ago, but a survey of apprentices and trainees that were currently in the system. And it was, the question asked, why did you undertake an apprenticeship or traineeship? And you can see I've circled there that under 5% of the respondents actually said that there was, because of future prospects, because it was a good thing to go into an apprenticeship and the career afterwards probably. The table on the left, the highest response, they wanted to work in that type of job. So clearly they knew about that job before they went into it, which means they probably have a father or a cousin or someone that's already working in the trade, and hence they know about it. They've chosen to go into it. But to have under 5% actually think that, it's a good future prospect reason to go in, I think shows what we've got a bit of an uphill battle in changing around the image and the perception of apprenticeships. And then the table below, 87%, 90% of apprentices that complete, straight away they're employed afterwards. So the reality is that the prospects are actually really good if you do an apprenticeship or traineeship, because 90% chance you're going to stay employed, you're going to keep a job. I think universities would love to have that sort of percentage of saying that their graduates were, guaranteed employment at the end of the program. But I don't think they've got those numbers. But and it's not about comparing. I don't mean to just compare uni versus apprenticeships, but I think what we need to do is promote better the future prospects for young people. Now, within apprenticeships, I'm quite often referring to a bit of a double-edged problem, or a twofold problem that we have in apprenticeships, and that's when I go to a school and promote apprenticeships. Quite often, sometimes, I won't say quite often, sometimes I get sort of pushback from people saying, well, we tried to get into an electrical pre-app program, we couldn't because the classes were full. So, you're telling us about these skill shortages and lack of people going into apprenticeships, yet, there's thousands of electrical and plumbing apprentices coming out. So I think we also have to be clearer in the messaging that there are popular apprenticeships and then there's not so popular apprenticeships. And I think, speaking to this audience here, I think you're well aware that the challenges you've had over the years of even, promoting your industry, let alone promoting it to young people to come into the industry as apprentices and trainees. I've done this before. I've asked questions in school groups and said, put your hand up, who knows what a fitter and turner is, and not one hand will go up. And if I said pattern making, I think, the odd hand that would go up, they'd probably think it's to do with fashion or something. So, so again, we need to sort of just break down that there is challenges in sectors, not all apprenticeships, and something that we're aware of, and we're very much, focusing on ways to fix that. I put this, again, the audience here tonight is really in that sort of manufacturing fold, and I think also something that we really struggle with is the image of manufacturing in Australia. I haven't sort of gone into it too much in detail here tonight, but the stats actually can prove that manufacturing's been going great over the last few years, and particularly in the last 12 months, manufacturing's had a great resurgence in Australia. And because we've had sort of negative images around manufacturing, because we closed some assembly lines, it's had a really damaging effect on the overall sort of industry. And it's not to say that, we haven't had bad times. We've had some real challenges, and there are declining numbers, and there's stats that also back up that manufacturing has had its challenges. But it's, I think, a bit of an imbalance of the image in Australia about what our manufacturing sector's like. So I think we need to come together as a manufacturing sector. So that includes, like I said before, things like even cabinet making and furnishing and food production and obviously these metal trades. We need to get together and work together as manufacturing and actually sort of help promote the industry and change some perceptions out there. So, I think the image that you saw there previously is that dirty old sort of dodgy workshop that's potentially dangerous, and it's unappealing for young people to want to go and work in. I know I go out to businesses all the time, and I know that's not a common sight at all anymore. Most workshops are a lot safer. They're modern. They've got new technology. They've got gadgets. They've got digital sort of screens and things around, and they're fantastic. But young people don't see that. They don't know that. They straight away probably get the image from their parents that factories are dark and dangerous and noisy and not that appealing. So I think it's around the image that we have to really start working on is showing that to young people, is that there's some really exciting opportunities out there. So there's one other one I come across, quite an interesting stat that I'm part of a network of the local jobs task force, which the federal government has set up, and I work on the southeastern Melbourne network, which covers sort of mainly that Dandenong area, but also a little bit of Bayside and down towards Casey, Cardinia Shires of the southeast. And this is, as of February this year, this was a breakdown of the people that are currently unemployed in the caseload within that southeastern area. And the highest sort of as by skill level here, you can see is people that haven't finished year 12 and they don't have any other qualification, and obviously they're going to find it very hard to find employment. But I just wanted to note that the least qualification based sort of person that's unemployed there is a tradie. So again, this is something that we have to get out to young people, is that, with a trade qualification, you're more likely to be employed than unemployed. So it's something that the overall apprenticeship image should really work on as well. So again, something that we do. I just want to go into something that we've sort of looked at of late, in a way of trying to generate numbers to come into engineering. And we're going out to a lot of schools. We're talking to careers advisors, and again, I mentioned earlier those LENs, the people that connect schools through to industry. And we really want to start, I'm going to say rebuilding, because I remember them happening many years ago, industry tours and work experience programs. And I think a few of those initiatives have sort of just dropped by the wayside and just really, like I say, just need to be reintroduced and reinvigorated. So I think from your business's point of view, no doubt you're going to be struggling to find, you put a job ad out, and the applications, that you're not going to get many young people coming out of school just applying for those jobs. So we've got to think outside the square and try and actively engage those young people to start thinking about coming into these occupations. So we're thinking about it from a school level, and then the transition areas here where I'm talking about is when they're in school, there are now some programs that we can look at that can begin their apprenticeship. So a school-based apprenticeship, or what I've put in there in the middle is another initiative in Victoria is called the Head Start program. And even simple things like work experience, allowing kids to come in for 2 weeks at a time during the school holidays and things like that. These are things that I think we need to start doing collectively across all the different trades before we can start, really making progress on changing those images. Young people are only going to see so many ads and then switch off. They're not going to be really swayed by just seeing a few ads to say, come into manufacturing and come into engineering. I really think we need to get them into the environments. And so there's a range of projects that we're looking at, from, like I said, school tours, industry tours, the pre-apprenticeship type programs. And this Head Start one that's happening in Victoria at the moment is quite a good one, which we're going to start looking at, and happy to talk to any of the businesses that would be interested in doing that. And then, like I said before about what we do with our apprentices in a Certificate 3, we don't just leave it at that. Once they're in the program, we don't just sort of say, okay, you're on your way to your trade certificate and then that's it, see you later. We start working with them on the high level qualifications. So looking at Certificate 3, Certificate 4, and then even diplomas nowadays. And that's where our higher apprenticeship program, which I had been working on for a number of years, came into play as well. So just, this is where I'm sort of calling on this group here to think about, when it comes to going out and promoting pattern making, casting, the foundry trades itself, doing it individually is going to be a challenge, because the fabrication and sheet metal industry is going to go out and start doing theirs, and then precision metal, CNC maintenance type stream people are going to go out and start promoting theirs as well. But I think rather than individually going out to schools and working on these programs and trying to highlight to kids, these opportunities, I'm thinking we bandy together to promote engineering and the metal trades together, join forces and look at getting pre-apprenticeship programs and things all together as engineering. Once we've got people into apprenticeships, then look at breaking an apprenticeship in half and actually looking at the first few years as being the core units, and they learn about all the fundamentals of engineering and metal work. And then from there, we start guiding people through into specific areas. And I know the old school skills are still required, and it's the fundamentals are sometimes different amongst those trades. But as far as attracting young people in, I don't think we can try and do it individually. I think we need to come together, bring people into engineering, and from there then start looking at streamlining them into the sectors that we need them. And I think Roger highlighted just before on his slide about the three key areas of the business within AW Bell, and you've got a foundry area, and then you've got a CNC machining area. Now, rather than trying to go out and identify kids to come into two of those different areas, an example could be bring them in, and for the first year or two they do an engineering apprenticeship, and it's only until after that that you then identify the skills and the strengths of those individuals and say, right, we might sort of work on you going in towards the foundry area, or you can start going into the precision metal area. And I think that way we can start building numbers first to bring them in, and then after that we can start diversifying them into the actual streams that we need them. So I'll just put that out there as food for thought. And look, just the last thing there was just around those the different programs that you can look at to then start attracting young people in. And again, I'm here to help sort of guide you. If you don't want to do it through group training, that's fine. But if you want to connect to someone like a local learning employment network provider that can put you in touch with your local tech schools and schools in your region to bring kids in, we're happy to help sort of facilitate that engagement as well. So I'll leave it there and open for any questions.
Thanks, Craig. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, got you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Thanks for stop sharing your screen.
That's all right. Yep.
Amber put up a question or typed in FIAB. You got any idea what that is, Craig?
FIAB.
Okay, sorry, I put you on the spot. No, that's foundry in a box.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
So it's basically a kit that you can take out to a secondary school and wheel it in, and the kids can have some hands-on experience of making a mold and then pouring some low melting point metal into that to make an object.
Yeah.
Is that something you would be interested in?
Very much so. And I was actually, I'm glad that was actually asked, because that was going to be one of my suggestions, was that to all businesses, and I say this to other sectors as well, is to really boost your recruitment in general. I really think in a trade area you could incorporate some sort of practical test for a young person to come in. And I think I've just frozen up. Can you still hear me okay?
I still hear you, but you're frozen.
Yeah, okay, the screen's all frozen up. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I think like a test or something like that you can give to a young applicant when they come in, so a testing rig that you can develop in the workplace, so that you're not just sitting them in a room and interviewing them, that you can actually watch them out in your workshop just doing a 10-15 minute test or something like that. The benefit is for them is that they're also going to gain a little bit of exposure to a workshop and the expectations in those workplaces. So if they don't get the job, they go for their next interview. There's 15 minutes of exposure that they've just had to look at what happens in one workplace, and hopefully that helps them get into another workplace as well. So I'd really like to see more about that foundry in a box idea, and see if that sort of works alongside that as well.
Are you able to see the chat screen, Craig?
I do. Yeah. Happy. I can go
Scroll
through those.
Down. And,
So the first one I've got from Craig about how we're going finding engineering type students. Yeah, we're really look. The positive is we've had more numbers in the last 6 to 9 months than we've had in many years. We're getting close to doubling the number of apprentices we've put on. So we've had an amazing 6 to 9 months, partly down to the I think a majority of it's down to that boosting apprenticeships funding that's come out from the government. So that's obviously put a lot of pressure on how many applicants we can find. But to have found that many in the last 12 months has been fantastic. So it's hard to sort of say we've had trouble because we've done so well with the numbers put on. But the realistic view is it's still extremely challenging finding good applicants to come in. We do a lot of work to go and find applicants. The next one from Sam. G'day, Sam from GoTAFE. Thank you. Pre-apprenticeship. A lot of employers struggling to find apprentices for their business. What are your thoughts on offering apprenticeships to international students? Look, really challenging in our space. A lot of our, you need to be an Australian citizen to enter into a training contract. So that's the one challenge. There has been a few, particularly over in WA, there was some, I'll call them initiatives where they were trying to get around that and allow sort of qualifications to be delivered whilst they're getting their citizenship, and then they could get credits and be classified as tradespeople. That's one way you could possibly work it. And probably a lot of our areas, and I'm sure Roger would agree with this, is that you're dealing in defence and sort of quite high security type projects, and so the government's got some protections around that as well. So bit difficult with offering it to international students. The same model, this is from Roger, the same model would work well to train for the Cert 4 in TAE. Yeah, very much so. There's a huge shortage of trade teachers at the moment in TAFE. So, I did my TAE, by the way, and was sharing your pain when you were saying about even gaining credits and doing it on weekends was equally challenging. So I could relate to what you were saying earlier, Roger. The focus on metal trades, I think the training packages is always a bit of a bugbear of ours, and I'm sure, Roger, you've experienced that as well when developing the qualification you showed us. The TAE is designed to be generic for all industries. Maybe combining it with a course that you've got developed there while someone's doing the TAE could be a good combination. A lot of study, but could be a good combination.
Yeah. What I was actually thinking about there was along the lines of when you're doing the Cert 4 and TAE, you're actually building example units. I mean, if you're doing the Cert 4 and TAE, although it might be interesting to learn how to be a barista, it's not really relevant. So because some of the units you might be building might be, say, how to use the computer or something like that, where if it was how to build a unit to teach someone to weld or to teach someone to do a particular sheet metal activity or something like that, if you get a group of trainers who are all learning the TAE together, but they're all learning about they're learning how to teach metal trades units specifically as part of the Cert 4 for TAE, I think would be a huge benefit.
There was the upgrade to the TAE, and it actually required all TAFE teachers to do a couple of units as an upgrade. So yeah, that probably, I agree with what you're saying. It sort of probably gave that opportunity at the time to bring tradespeople in and just do the upgraded TAE.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it from the perspective of if you got half a dozen people from Welding Technology Australia, half a dozen people from AFI, half a dozen people from some of the other metals trades groups, and you actually got them all into the same course so that they're working together. I think that would be beneficial to everybody, actually. Because you're learning, you're sort of like-minded when you're doing the learning, and so. And then if it's focused towards, if the Cert 4 is focused towards metal trades, I think you'd actually find more people would put their hand up to learn to do it. No,
I agree. Yeah.
Craig, if you don't mind, I have a question. So
yeah.
the Australian metal casting industry is pretty small and quite regionally based, and the numbers of apprentices we can support in any given year is not going to be huge like your mechanics, etc. Maybe 10 to 15 in Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, and maybe 15 combined with Western Australia and South Australia. Given this constraint, what do you envisage as a training model that is sustainable for our industry, for that particular trade?
Yeah, look, great question. And I think it's something, again, back to that sort of model about maybe splitting an apprenticeship, that if people were doing a first and second year of just engineering, there's a lot more accessibility to training providers across the country. And then if for this industry specific, you looked at, say, third and fourth years, and maybe even it's just like a few more units out of the Cert 3, combine that with a Cert 4, and then something like Roger's program, and that is more industry specific. That could be a 1 to 2 year program delivered on top of the standard apprenticeship in engineering that was delivered at the outset. So I think, again, you highlight the regional and the access to training providers. That's only getting harder in engineering in itself. We're down to 4 main providers here in Melbourne for metal engineering fitting providers, and across the country it's the same thing. So we're getting fewer TAFEs investing in engineering training. It's the most expensive course for them to deliver and have campuses set up for offering training. So in one sense, we're heading towards a bit of a crunch point, I think, where if TAFEs are reluctant to keep investing in engineering, it potentially may lead towards having on-the-job delivery models. And we actually had a bit of a go at that for a while, of having a trainer attend site and deliver training on site. So that could be an option as well. So, and particularly for a regional area, I think quite a cost-effective way to do it, so you don't lose people off the job. The trainer comes to you.
That's the training that GoTAFE are delivering for our moulding and casting, and intent to do the same for the pattern making as well.
Yeah.
So that said, then, what can we do as an industry? What can our businesses do, and AFI in particular, to promote this model? How can we help? What can we do to get the word out?
I think you've done a lot, and particularly as an industry sector, you've been really, really good and proactive in this space. I've heard similar challenges from the fluid power industry and the parks and gardens industries and associations, and so everyone's they're all seeing these challenges. And what you guys are doing already by just simply inviting me tonight, Roger's example of what they're doing, proactively developing courses, are really great steps. I think the key would be to try and invest as much as you can in connecting to schools and the networks with schools, and open the doors for work experience, industry tours, and it's a cost. It's a direct cost now, I know that, and it's quite a bit of time until you get a return on that, that time that you put into it. But I think collectively as an industry, if you start doing that, the longer term rewards will be that, at least kids know about this industry and they can make a choice. And hopefully, with some extra sort of support and promotion, we can help, generate kids to actually start apprenticeships in these areas. So I just think a really good call out would be just to, think about what your organisation can do independently to get involved and try and get some young people to come in and have a look around.
Okay.
Craig, there was an unanswered question from Craig Arnold. Might have got lost in the system. How much training out of work time?
Yes, how much training out of work time do students need per week, month, per year? So for a standard apprenticeship, you're looking at about 40 days per year over 3 years is what's allocated to them. So around about 1,000 hours of training that equates to, or 40 days per year over 3 years. I would say the majority of our apprentices complete in about probably 2.5 years the schooling component. That's with competency-based progression. And then, like I said earlier, about us combining the Certificate 4 and other qualifications, we generally then sort of stretch that back out to make it like a 4-year program. So, yeah, out of work about 120 days in total, if that's the easiest way to answer that.
Mm-hmm. Craig's got a follow-up one there. 3 divisions: plastic, CNC, die casting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, working across all those divisions. Look, plastics is an interesting one. We're actually working with a large group at the moment on the plastic injection molding sort of training. There is a qualification out there. No one's delivering it. That's a particular, maybe just a little bit of a tricky area. The other area is definitely you can combine that. I think the rotations in your workplace as well are really good. Young people are learning so much quicker than they used to. I mean, you can just jump on YouTube and watch how-to videos, and kids are just picking up things so quickly. So, rotating them through your workplace and exposing them to different areas of the workplace is something that's, I think, evolving and growing. You don't have to just pigeonhole people into certain areas. And some of our really good programs that we've got, particularly there's one in Bayswater where we've got a host company that rotates their apprentices around 4 key areas. They go from CNC into tool making, into welding, and then into the maintenance area. And they have a 3-month placement in each of those. So, each stage of their apprenticeship, they go back into those areas, and so they progress their skills and the knowledge in each of those 4 areas. And I think it really helps with their retention. They seem to not enjoy going into the CNC area much, but we're able to say, look, it's only for 3 months, and then you get to go to welding again or something. So it really keeps them engaged, and the retention is a winner there as well. So, yeah.
Sam was asking if you could provide your contact details. Was that on the last slide? But I don't think it came.
No, I actually took it off. Bad me, isn't it?
Okay. Well,
let me just,
I guess we could do that.
I'm happy to. Why my chat box
Oh yeah,
didn't work there. I'm just frozen up. That's all.
Yeah.
It'll come. I'll put it
You
in the
might
chat
be
box.
running things in the background. That's the problem I had the other night. I closed all my background applications.
Yep, there it goes. It was just frozen up. So I'll just I'll put those in the chat box for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I have another question that that perhaps Craig you can help with. The casting industry has particular needs for things like messaging, CAD drawing, and in some cases induction furnace operation. They're quite specific, and so it's not something that a whole program like Roger has developed and provided in conjunction with Chisholm would necessarily cover. Is the higher apprentice model, AIG higher apprentice model, something that could be developed, or could it use and develop programs for our industry businesses to use for that specific type of training? Or
yeah, most definitely. And the higher apprenticeship model itself can be used across different industries. It doesn't have to be just the one that we piloted, which was around applied technologies, and that was focusing on the digitalisation. There's actually a higher apprenticeship model that's been used in business by PwC, and they're doing that for accounting and business trainees and people. So the concept of the higher apprenticeship is basically just doing a diploma or an associate degree qualification in an apprenticeship model, so doing it in the workplace. So that to answer that question, I think those specific skill sets or those higher skill needs do actually work quite well in that higher apprenticeship model. The applied technology training package, I think, could align quite well to a number of your members' needs. The applied technologies focuses on Industry 4. It's got digitalization, there's automation, there's the virtual reality, there's I'm trying to rack my brain now to think of all the different units in there, but it also integrates with the MEM training package in engineering. So candidates can get units credited because they've done them in their apprenticeship, and then it aligns through to the diploma qualifications. So, and I'm happy to share information out about that and go into that in more detail with specific companies if they're interested.
That would be great. Perhaps as a follow-up to this presentation, we can actually send a slide with all your details out and distribute to our membership so people can easily contact you with regard to any specific questions and just general questions as well, if you're okay with that. So we might get something from you and do that.
Definitely.
I might hand over to you now, Amber, to wrap up and mute everybody.
Okay, all right. Well, gosh, this has gone on. We had a bit of a rocky old start, but I think in the end we got there. Thank you all for your patience and for sticking with us. Thank you, Craig, for your presentation, and Roger too, of course. Both of you, without your input and willingness to assist tonight, we would be nowhere near where we are now. As I said, we'll do a follow-up. If we have people who are interested in personally contacting you, you'll see Craig's details on the screen in the chat section. We'll send out as AFI an email with details, etc., for you to follow up. And further still, after some editing, we might whack this up on our website so that people can have a review of it at a later stage and pick up any details that they have missed as the presentation has gone along. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Roger. And have a lovely night, everybody.